Hi, this is Sue Jackson of the Book by Book blog, and I'm here with another Friday Reads, a late Friday Reads today because Christmas. We had a house full for Christmas Day and into yesterday, and so yeah, there was no recording videos yesterday. I used up every ounce of energy for our holiday celebrations, and we still had more yesterday, our annual Christmas cookie Grinch party with our closest and oldest friends and the kids who are now all in their 30s or close to it. I'm going to try to keep this brief. I'm reading some great books that I can't wait to tell you about. But I just recorded our Christmas book haul and it ended up longer than I expected. So I am sitting up, but not for long. Still not in good shape from my chronic illness, so need to get back to the couch. So I'm going to keep this short and sweet, but I have to tell you about the books that I'm reading. First, a very quick look back at The People in the Trees by Hanya Yanagihara, because I finished it last weekend. Whew. Okay. Everything I said in last week's Friday Reads, which I will link to, about this book is absolutely true. It's an outstanding novel. It is very well written. It is completely immersive, compelling, suspenseful, very thought-provoking on two different counts. But And I hinted at that there were some disturbing aspects of it. I feel like that's just the tip of the iceberg. I finished it, and those last few pages were like a gut punch. And they weren't unexpected. What was revealed in those last few pages was basically what was hinted at throughout the whole book. From page 1, you kind of knew what was happening. But to have the narrator himself, who is not a good person, recount the details was horrifying, really was. My husband was sitting next to me in bed while we were reading while I finished this, and he was making fun of me because I was just like, he told, because my mom asked what I thought of the book on Christmas because she had given it to me and it's one of her favorites. And my husband told her those last few pages, I was just saying, no, 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 no. So just fair warning. I have heard that her other novel, the best-selling A Little Life, is similarly disturbing. So if you've read that and that worked for you, then I'd say go ahead and read this. If you do not like books that are disturbing, then I would skip it. Excellent, outstanding novel. I'm glad I read it, but wow. Okay, so I was in need of something a little less dark. But I do have a stack of books that I really wanted to get to before the end of the year. So what I chose was A Visit from the Goon Squad by Jennifer Egan. Won the Pulitzer, named to like every top everything list, won all kinds of awards, and I had never read it before. Came out in 2010, and I've been meaning to read it for years. So my husband gave it to me as a gift last year, and I am finally reading it about halfway through, and I am loving it. So this is another book. The People in the Trees had a very unusual format, and this is another book that is an unusual approach to a novel, but it's working for me. I've heard it described as a collection of short stories, similar to Olive Kitteridge. I guess that's not too far off, but I'm experiencing it a little bit differently because there are links. Each chapter is indeed focused on a different character, but they all connect. They are all interrelated. So you start out at two of the main characters, although it's hard to say main characters with this one, but it focuses on a man named Benny, who is a record executive and aging punk rocker. He had his own punk band when he was a teenager. It's what got him started in the music business. He was never all that good as a musician, but he's an excellent music producer. So that's where he has focused his life's work. He's older now. At the beginning, he's divorced. He's got a son. So Benny is one of the main characters. The very first chapter is actually about Benny's assistant for 12 years, a woman named Sasha, and her efforts to try to overcome kleptomania, which she's working with a therapist on. And it goes from there, and each additional chapter brings in another character who's related somehow. I think Benny's kind of the center of this wheel of spokes. But those connections are sometimes tenuous, and the time, and I know this will drive some people crazy. I'm enjoying it. But the time skips back and forth a lot. So you get Benny present day, and you get Sasha present day. And then there's a chapter about when Benny was a teenager. And then one of his best friends and had the punk rock band. And then the next chapter focuses on one of his friends from that period of time who hung out with him and was associated with their punk band back in the day. And then there's another chapter about a guy who was related to her. And you kind of go on in this way with all these different interactions and interconnectedness. Later on in the novel, you get a chapter from Benny's ex-wife's perspective, but it's from while they were married and actually what led to their breakup. And then his ex-wife works for a PR firm. And then you get a chapter from the woman who runs her PR firm and her downfall years later and how she tried to come back. So these are all incredibly interesting characters. The writing is outstanding. I can see why it won the Pulitzer. And each of these chapters is just completely engrossing on its own. But then, and this is why I'm not thinking of it as short stories, with every new chapter, even if it's focused on a different person, you get some insight into the characters you met before because you're getting someone else's perspective on them or how someone else interacted with them. So I am really enjoying it. The tone is just right for me. Definitely, I mean, there's some difficult stuff that the characters are going through, but definitely lighter than the people in the trees. There's some humor in it. I'm enjoying because it does move back and forth in time, I'm enjoying the historical aspects. I don't like to think of the periods that I lived through as history, but there you have it. So I'm really enjoying A Visit from the Goon Squad by Jennifer Egan. Can't wait to read more. On audio, this weekend I also finished The Mighty Red by Louise Erdrich. Again, I talked about that in detail last week, so you can look back at Friday Reads from last week. And I loved it. And it got better and better and better. She is a fabulous writer. I love her writing. I love her books on audio. You just get really engrossed in the characters. I described what this one was about in the last video, but it's generally, it's about a community. And there's tragedy, but there is also joy and hope and renewal. Just love Louise Erdrich, and her books are wonderful on audio. So definitely recommend that. Speaking of audio, a good book blogging friend who I've known for almost 20 years now online, though we live on opposite sides of the country. She had just commented on my book blog that she listened to this on audio and it didn't work for her. And I think I understand why. I don't think this would be good on audio because you are skipping around in time and to different characters. And I think that works better in print. So just a side note there. So for my last audiobook of the year, first of all, I was looking at something that I could actually fit into the end of the year because I started it on Christmas Eve day, I think. And of course, we've been incredibly busy and we've had people here and not a lot of reading time or audio time. But I wanted something good, something I've been meaning to read for a while. So I chose The Giant's House by Elizabeth McCracken. Didn't remember much of anything about why I even chose this book. It was in my audio backlog. But it was a finalist for the National Book Award, which is probably why I chose it from the publisher. And it's interesting so far. It's unusual. So it's about, the narrator is a librarian in a small town on Cape Cod. And it's about when she meets and gets to know a unique boy in her town. He's 11 years old when he first comes into the library and they meet. But what is unusual about this boy is he is unbelievably tall. Like he hits 6 foot. I think by age 11, he was already 6 foot. And I think his final height is 7 something, like close to 8 feet. So he's very well known in town. You can't miss him. Kind of renowned for his height. But the librarian is narrating. And she, from the beginning, she says that eventually she fell in love with him, which at the beginning feels a little ew because she's like 26 and he's 11. But, by the time he's an adult, age difference, my husband's 11 years older than I am. Would have been really gross if I were 11 and he was 22. But, when we met in our 20s and 30s, it wasn't such a big deal. So I understand where she's coming from with this. And it's good so far. I'm enjoying it. I would say this is also a novel about a community in part, even though the focus is on these two characters, the librarian and the very tall boy. So I'm still pretty close to the beginning. He is growing up and getting taller. She's getting to know his family. And, so far the characters are interesting and intricate. The narration is excellent on the audio and I'm enjoying it. So that's what I'm reading and listening to this week and what I've just finished. I would love to hear what you're reading in this last week of the year. Please let me know in the comments down below.